Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Vegan Spirituality Online Gathering. I'm Lisa Levinson. I'm the director of the Sustainable Activism Campaign for In Defense of Animals, and this program is actually a project of IDA. What we do as part of our Sustainable Activism Campaign is offer emotional and spiritual resources for animal activists. Vegan spirituality actually started many years ago as an effort to offer forums for people who are vegan and also felt they had a spiritual calling to be vegan, to explore what does it mean to be vegan as a spiritual practice. So we started with retreats and local gatherings where people have a potluck and they do some meditation and then have discussion topics related to vegan spirituality, just so we could learn more and discover who are we as vegans and also spiritual beings. We just had a vegan spirituality retreat this past weekend in Philadelphia. It was our 7th annual event, and it was lots of fun, very cozy. So if anyone is here on the call who joined us over the weekend, we thank you so much for participating. And anyone who didn't make it, we have another one coming up in Gainesville, Florida, that will be April 1st and 2nd at Jungle Friends Primate Sanctuary. So we're looking very forward to that event as well. So this online gathering is kind of the sister gathering to about 20 other in-person gatherings that happen across the country. And if you're curious if there's one near you, you can go to veganspirituality.com and look under groups. And there you'll see the different cities that are listed, which have either a meetup or a Facebook group that's a vegan spirituality group. And it's a lovely way to stay connected and have that in-person opportunity to relate to others and make new friends. So we encourage that. And if there's not one in your group, you can just send us an email at veganspirituality@gmail.com and we'll help you set one up in your area. We have a new one that just started in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I'd love to introduce my co-host, the author of Peace to All Beings, Judy Carmen. Hey,
Hi,
Judy.
everybody. Hi.
Yay.
Joining us.
Yes. We're so glad to hear you, Judy.
So I'm going to introduce our wonderful guest. Were you done, Lisa?
Yes.
What you say? Okay. Didn't want to interrupt. Linda, whom you can see over there, we're so thrilled that you have joined us and honored because I know you're very busy. Linda Fisher is a professional artist with paintings found all over the world in private homes and local galleries. Her greeting cards have been purchased by the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C., and many other places, including Whole Foods. We could probably find some locally. You can see some of her astonishing art at lindagfisher.com. That's right down there in the notes there, the chat box. She is of Ojibwe and Cherokee heritage and is a tribal member of the Ojibwe Nation. Her family is of the Catfish clan. She shares her home with an adopted dog and 6 rescued ferrets. Love to hear about them. Linda Fisher is an animal activist who's dedicated much of her life to educating society about the plight of captive parrots. She was thrust into animal activism at the tender age of 11 on seeing a tiny parakeet suffering and dying in a department store. Linda soon discovered that she had an uncanny ability to communicate with non-human animals and to feel their emotions, and we're going to hear something about that. I know we're all anxious to hear about that. And she was consequently inspired to tell their stories through art, which you can see some of the art behind Linda, and so you can see how amazing it is. Linda's sensitivity and remarkable connection to other animals has gained international recognition for her work. She's also vegan and an accredited animal behavior specialist and consultant. She uses positive reinforcement and the science of applied behavior analysis, which is a force-free, compassionate form of behavior modification. She's also co-authored several published books about animals and birds and is presently writing her memoir about her amazing relationships with non-human species that she's been fortunate enough to know on a very special level. Very book. So I will start out with the first, because we're all very anxious to hear you, Linda, instead of me. Tell us how you realized that you had psychic and artistic abilities. I understand your mother called you a name which I can't pronounce that means guardian spirit woman. What was it like to be a child with such amazing abilities?
Well, the name is Gisha Damokwe, and actually, it's interesting because I didn't know that I had anything special. I just figured that that's the way it was. Um, so I never really, I didn't have a pivotal experience that suddenly said, oh, gee, that I'm, psychic and I can talk to animals. It was just a gradual thing of understanding. For me, the moment that I knew, I guess you could say, had some kind of an understanding that it was different, that I was able to communicate on a level that maybe some other people weren't doing. It was when I was a little girl, around, I think I was 6 or 7 years old, and my father was doing what a lot of great dads do, taking his kids out for some recreation and to go fishing. And it was one of those fishing places where they stock the fish, you pay money, and then you're guaranteed to catch a fish. And so he thought it would be a great experience for us. So it was my sister and my brother and I, my mother and my dad. And I caught the first fish. And it was at that moment that I realized this is really, really not what I wanted to do. I could actually feel, as soon as I felt the fish tugging on the line, I start screaming. It was the worst feeling because I could feel everything the fish was feeling. I could feel the pain in the mouth. I could feel the thrashing. I could feel his body. I could feel his terror. And I just knew that I was terrified. It was a horrible feeling. I wanted away from it. So when everyone was excited because they thought I caught a fish and they were all jumping up and happy, I was actually really feeling horrible. So I dropped the pole, I screamed and cried and ran off with the poor fish, you know. So I was upset about the fish, but interestingly, I was upset about myself because I thought I was somehow different and wrong, and I didn't understand it then. So I thought I had done something wrong and that I was the wrong person because I wasn't happy. I wasn't feeling good about it, and everyone else was feeling good, and it was supposed to be good. So actually, for me, it was a more upsetting experience than a good one. However, it was then that I realized that after evaluating and thinking about it, that I was feeling things that other people weren't feeling about animals. So yeah, so that was kind of my beginning um, in
So
that
then,
area.
huh? Wow. So did your parents help you out at that point to understand what
Well,
was happening?
it was just because what I was feeling and the connection that I was feeling, we didn't really talk about it. We just, my mother's very intuitive, and it was just not something that we really discussed. So adulthood, that I realized that where I understood it, it's when I became an adult that it really made sense and I started understanding. I learned that there was a word called psychic, um, and so that made sense. And then I started, but I still didn't talk about it. very quiet,
Wow.
very present, because there was kind of a negative connotation. Static. I'm hearing the static. Are you hearing?
No, but actually, if you bring the little microphone a little closer to your mouth, we'll hear your
Okay.
voice.
Oh, good. Okay.
Mhm.
So I was, it wasn't until adulthood that I really started doing more serious work, but I still didn't talk about it much, and I didn't really open up to the world. Um, it's only within the last 10 years that I decided to really open up because what I was seeing was that animals needed somebody to help them understand where they're coming from. Because what I was seeing out there by a lot of other animal communicators was not what I was, it really wasn't what I was seeing and feeling.
Yeah, that's what one thing you were saying earlier when we were communicating, that it was different from other animal communicators, and theirs is more of a lot of them are more of an anthropomorphic viewpoint. And you mentioned seeing a more primal essence of an animal, as well as being able to see a physical illness in them. So when you're working as a consultant to help a guardian with an animal, how do you help the person understand what you're seeing and feeling? Since it's not anthropomorphic, it's more closer to what the animal is trying to say.
Right. Um, it's kind of hard to explain, but when I talk to people about their animals, it's basically I'm translating, in a sense, on a more human level, but what I'm picking up is not, it's not an anthropomorphic type situation. For example, I'm not going to tell, the animals aren't telling me, we want world peace. They're not, I'm not out swimming, the, the people who go out and swimming out with the dolphins, their dolphins aren't telling them we want world peace. In my opinion and from my experience, animals are operating from a whole different level than we are. They are far more advanced psychically, far more, and they're not getting caught up in the mundane sort of human experiences. I think there are a lot of great psychics out there, so I don't mean any any criticism of their work. It's just from my experience, they're operating at a different level. They're not little people. They feel emotions, they cry, they worry, they love, they laugh. Um, they know when things are going to happen to them. They know they can predict the future. Those are the wild animals. Um, because they're sensing on a natural level. They're sensing what's happening in the earth, and the earth is speaking to them. Um, and our domestic animals, they know when we're coming home or they know when we don't feel well. Sometimes if an animal, someone might come to me because their cat or their dog may be experiencing some anxiety or stress and they don't understand why, or they're not like quote unquote, they're not themselves. And usually, animals are just a mirror of us oftentimes. And so if an animal is treated, if it's in an environment where it's high stress, then the animal is going to be in high stress. So I try to explain on that level what that means.
Try to
So,
what? I missed that last one.
yeah, I am going to, maybe I'm going to try to change the headset here because on my end I'm getting a lot of static. Is that okay?
Sure, sure, that's fine. Yeah. So it's really interesting to hear your perspective, Linda. I mean, I think learning about the different types of animal communication and how people tune in, and I think also your background really helps you to understand the animals as they speak to you from their perspective, which is really neat. And I think, Judy, also we had a quote that we put in here that was from Linda, and it might be don't know if you're going to refer to it later, but it's a lovely quote.
Yeah, really is. I love it. And if you scroll back to the top of the chat box, you'll see it there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I might go ahead and read it because we do have a few people on the phone. So the quote from Linda, who's our guest this evening, is, "The spiritual vegan connection has always been very close to my heart. In my opinion, the true essence of spirituality cannot be separated from a fully compassionate lifestyle, and that equates to veganism." Wow, that just blows me away. It's so beautiful.
Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes, just fine.
Okay, great. Yeah, so back on the topic of, of working with plants, it's people have become so accustomed to hearing that very human conversation. For example, animals aren't going, I don't like my name. If they have a name, negative connotation. And if they call their runaway, or I don't know, I could think of a lot of, and they call their names difficult names or negative names. It's not that the animal even understands the name. If you have a positive connotation with runaway, if it's a positive thing in your life, the energy that you present is also going to be very positive. But if you named your dog Runaway because he ran away and his life, and he keeps running away, and you're maybe a negative connotation. They don't on a shelf because you work out your problem. Say, the dolphins aren't going to. They operate on a different level, and but they can't. But that doesn't mean they're not feeling of having.
Mm-hmm. So can I just take a moment and really encourage all of our speakers to speak up? We're getting a few comments that people can't hear us. So notice where your microphone is, and you need it to be right near your mouth. And if you turn your head, it also changes how we hear you. So,
okay.
All right. Okay, everyone. Well, hang in with us. Sorry about this. We're working on the technical stuff.
I've been hearing a lot of static too, so I'm not sure on it.
Yeah.
Well, so, Linda, I really am fascinated by what you said, that animals are operating on a higher level than we are. And
right.
I'm wondering what that means, because I have felt that as well. But it's, I don't have any proof. And I'm wondering what that means to you. How do you see that?
Can you hear me okay now? Is that better?
I can hear you better. Let's see if anyone can mention how they.
So I would love to answer that question. Okay. Sorry, Judy, can you ask that question?
The question again?
Yeah.
Yes. I was saying that you mentioned that animals operate from a higher level than we do. And I wanted to know more about that, because I sense that as well.
Right. I think that we have to try to be, just look, one explanation would be that I think we have to think of animals like we would children, gifted children. Children may be incredibly gifted and have that special gift, but they're still not worldly. They don't understand about politics. They don't understand about our world vision. They don't understand about war. They only understand what's affecting them in the moment. They may be gifted, maybe they're psychic, Maybe they can pick up the energy of other people and other things, but it they're not going to be telling us we want world peace because they don't know about world peace. They don't understand that concept. That's a human anthropomorphic situation. So in that case, so yeah, we have to take ourselves out of the occasion, and we have to approach them in a very humble, sort of naive way ourselves, and look at them as, say, the higher power in a sense, where we are not the superior ones. We are allowing them to direct us and guide us and share information, much like we would try to understand a child. I always say, look at them as a gifted child. You know, they're going to talk to you about what they're feeling and from the very mundane primal level. For example, if there's negativity in the home, they're going to be experiencing that negativity whether they talk about it or not. Um, if a person has, you know, again, back to the name, if a person has a negative connotation, they don't care what you call them. They're not going to say, gee, I don't like my name, that's why I've been misbehaving. They're going to, if you have a negative connotation to that, if you're going to be projecting that, and that's what they're not liking. So when I hear people say, you know, we've changed the name and now the behavior is so much better. It's more about what we're doing. It's more about our actions, our energy, and our behavior. Animals just simply respond and mirror what's going on around them, whether they're a domestic animal or whether they're an animal in the wild. They're responding to habitat destruction. They're responding to the noises. They're responding to the shaking of the earth or the fires or the shootings that are happening or the trapping. And that disrupts, obviously, their whole lives, their families, where they live, where they're going to forage to eat, and so on. So I look at everything in both what the animals are doing and what's happening in the environment. I look at the whole thing because I don't think they're separable.
Right. Yeah. Well, so has what you have learned from the animals prompted you to become vegan and to be their voice in the world? Or were you already vegan a long time ago? How did that all come about?
I've been vegan for a long time, but I started out as a vegetarian, and that immediately went into veganism because I also try to eat really healthy, and I didn't see veganism and not being vegan. I didn't see veganism, I'm sorry, vegetarianism, eating all the things that really aren't all that healthy for us. So we just, you know, if we move that out, then we've got a vegan diet. So it didn't take long for me to go to a vegan diet. I think for me, you know, I know that for me as an animal intuitive, and you feel those emotions, you felt that fish struggling on the fishing line. It's, you know, I didn't start out that way, but I made the connection fairly early on that how can I speak out on their behalf? How can I feel those emotions and then eat them? You know, it just didn't make any sense. It just, for me, it was an equation to cannibalism. That was just me personally. You know, the cow, the pig has absolutely no different needs. They cry, they laugh, they play. They're incredibly intelligent, just no different than a dog. And most of us don't eat dogs. Um, so, you know, and again, going back to when I first discovered or felt like I was communicating with animals, it was just kind of a gradual thing. I don't remember any heavy duty pivotal moment where it was an epiphany and I said, oh gosh, I can't eat these animals. So um, it's just always kind of, when I was a little girl, I was not raised vegetarian, but when I was a little girl, I just had an instinctive dislike for meat. It was just, I don't know. So it's kind of hard for me to answer that question because I honestly don't remember when that was. But I can say, though, that once you reach that moment of of when that light does go off, when you do have that epiphany, when you realize how um, incredibly sensitive animals are, and how they have so much going on in their own hearts and souls. It truly, once you make that realization and you connect, being vegan, or perhaps starting out vegetarian first and not eating meat, is so easy. It's not a
Yeah.
struggle. You don't sit back and wish, gee, I wish I could have that hamburger. I'm craving that hamburger. It just doesn't work that way. Because once you make that connection, it's can be difficult, perhaps, but you know you don't want to go back. That's my opinion
Right.
anyway.
Especially for uh, someone like you who has felt what they feel, and you don't want to create that kind of suffering in them.
Right.
Which
And
one thing that, go ahead.
I was just going to say that I wish I could just hold somebody's hand and share that with them and let them feel what I feel. Um, it's there aren't any words that can really express that, or really even except just to say that um, veganism for me is the ultimate. It's like the ultimate life, the ultimate achievement in life. It's you're not taking away life, and you're living a compassionate life. So yeah, I wish I could. I do. I wish there was like this magic wand that I had, that I could just help people, not change them on their, not force them for change, but just let them feel what I feel. And I know there are a
Yeah.
lot of people out there who do feel that way, but for those who don't, you just wish, hold my hand, feel what I feel. Let it transmit like that fish in the fishing line. I think that really is life changing.
Well, so I've read that many of your paintings are inspired by your passion for animal advocacy and your desire to make a difference for the animals. So, and I think the beauty and the loving energy of your paintings must surely reach people at the heart level. And I just wonder if, what you're talking about, taking their hands, maybe your paintings are doing that for people. So what is that process like for you to paint these beautiful paintings? They're just
Oh,
so
um,
astonishing.
I was, when people talk to me, I sometimes when I'm in my studio, that's my favorite place. I'm a little hermit, so I spend a lot of time there. But it is a wonderful feeling. But when I almost kind of, it's like my meditation place. I lose track of time. If it wasn't for my birds and my little dog, I probably would paint 20 hours straight. They keep me from doing that. They keep me out, moving around and doing other things. But it's a very spiritual situation for me, and I always like to share this one experience, because for me it was I want to motivate activists, um, give them hope. Um, but I received inspiration from somebody who's purchased my work, and I was at a conference, an AR conference one year, and I was selling my posters and prints, and a woman had come there from Japan, and she was just there for a short time. She bought some of my work, and we didn't talk much because it was so busy. Um, but she sent me a long email when she got home, and it was I mean, it was so inspiring, and it just made me feel so good that I was able to touch somebody. But what had happened to her was, in Japan, she supported animal rights, but her family had disowned her, and she had no other family. And so that was really hard decision for her, to become vegan, to go on the path of animal advocacy when everyone in her family was basically criticizing her, and then ultimately disowning her because she wouldn't quit her passion to make a difference for animals. And she said that she bought my poster, and it's the one of the sort of Madonna looking woman and all the animals. And she said she put it right in front of her bed so that every morning when she woke up, she would see it. And she said, it lets me know I'm not alone.
Oh, wow.
So that, yeah. So that was really inspiring. I mean, that helped me. It made me cry. Because, I think a lot of activists are out there. They are alone. They don't have necessarily family support. They are, ostracized. Some of them are, like this woman was. And I try to make art that not only says something for the animals, but also makes people realize that you're doing the right thing. It's tough sometimes, but you are making a difference and you're doing the right time. And you're not alone, So.
That's beautiful. Yeah, yeah, the power of art, because there's so much of your spirit in your art. And so it must communicate so much, on a really deep level without words, beyond words. So, do you see your veganism, and I think you do, as a spiritual practice? It certainly sounds like you do. How does your veganism help you on a spiritual level?
Oh gosh, I don't even separate the two. I just personally, I don't feel that there can be a separation. A spiritual life is about a compassionate life. A spiritual life is caring about what's happening to our planet, what's happening to one another, what's happening to the family and the people we love. I just can't separate an animal's needs, their love. They cry, they want peace on earth just like we do, but not in the same way, not in the human type of conversation that we just discussed earlier. But I just can't. We can't separate the two, and it does make me sad when I see spiritual gatherings or religious gatherings, and then they serve ham, well knowing, at the end of their potluck after their ceremony or their, services, because these are good people. Most of the time, they're caring people, they're good people, they mean well, and I always just say I say forgive them for they know not what they do. And I think as activists, people who are on a mission, we just need to tell our story, tell the animal story, and that's what I try to do with my art. I try to tell their story. The one thing that I don't do with my art is I don't paint blood and gore. I don't paint the negativity of their lives. I've been criticized for that, but I feel like there is a place for footage and photography, and we need to document that because it's happening. I think it's very important, but I I don't want to put out more negative energy than what's already existing, so I create images that I hope tell their story and express that they are sentient beings who have emotions just like we do. So that's what I try to tell in my paintings. That's just me. I know there's other great artists who tell stories differently about animals, and that's fine too. But for me personally, I like to create. I believe the energy that we put out is extremely important, and I think it does make a difference. So I do try to paint images that show the beauty of animals. And I don't consider myself a wildlife artist. I just try to tell their story the best way that I know how.
And I think it reaches people at such a deep level that they may not even know they're being changed in their relationship to animals. Or awakened, maybe is a better word, because I think that love for animals is in everyone, but it gets shut down. So what advice, Linda, what advice do you have for everyone who's listening, including me, to stay spiritually strong in this work of animal activism where we face a lot of, as you know, lots of sadness and tragedy for the animals. And you're doing such a beautiful job of keeping the energy high with your paintings. But what kind of advice do you have? And maybe the animals might have some advice for us too. They seem to know how to live happily in some of the worst circumstances. And I think that teaches us a lot too.
Right. Well, I think my advice for activists is to just stay strong. Stay strong. Realize that, the greatest things in life never came easy. It's like any other cause that we all work towards and strive for. And, don't let other people's negativity get you down. You know, um, society is really ingrained in meat eating and how important it is that you need it to stay healthy. There's so many myths out there, and these people who, they don't know any better. They've grown up with a certain standard, and everybody has to find their own place in their own time and in their own space. And I think a lot of people will, and it takes people like you and me and others to really just keep sharing that message. Just keep sharing that message, um, and just to know that you're not alone, even if you're we're very fortunate, those of us who live on the East Coast, are on the West Coast and perhaps the East Coast. And out somewhere in between, sometimes it's not so hard, or some towns are small and they don't have some of the, you know, groceries or foods that we might have. But you can still eat really healthy, go online, you can learn to have a wonderfully healthy, delicious meal. And just sharing that information. I think that's the beauty of what you're doing here. Is That's why so much I wanted to do this, because it is making a difference for people. I think in general people don't want to see animals hurt. They don't want to do something that's going to be painful or hurtful or cause suffering. They want to do the right thing. It's just tough, for some people it's just really tough, and it just takes time. So I think as activists we need to be patient, and we need to understand that for some of us, for many it took time, and everyone's not going to reach the level that maybe we have or some others, but they're still trying and they're still getting there. And that's probably the most important thing.
To stay with it. Don't give up.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I've been painting for a long time. I don't plan on giving up until I can't hold that paintbrush anymore.
I hope. So, want to open up for questions? I think
Sure.
that's chat box, and might want to unmute themselves to ask a question.
Yeah, sure. So how it happens is I'll go ahead and change the settings so that we can have anyone who has a question can ask it. And we also have a couple of questions in the chat box that we'll go ahead and include. So if you sit tight for a moment, you'll hear a little announcement.
All attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
So if you're on the phone and you'd like to ask a question for Linda, you can press *6, and if you're actually on the computer, there's a little icon There's one that's a raise hands icon. You can use that one, or you can unmute your own mic yourself by clicking on the little microphone icon. And so we invite any questions. You're welcome to chime right in. We also have one in the chat box I'd like to mention as well. So is anybody with us? I'll go ahead. Yes. Who is this?
It's Chris.
Hi, Chris. Do you
Hello?
have a question?
Hi.
Hello.
Well, I have something somebody told me once.
Mm-hmm.
It's not always easy being yourself, but it's always worthwhile.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. Wonderful.
You're welcome.
Oh. I'm wondering. Yeah, go ahead. Were you going to say something else?
It was nice seeing you last week.
Yes, it was. So Chris actually attended our vegan spirituality retreat in Philadelphia. So it's a real treat to hear your voice after seeing you at the retreat. Thank you so much for coming. It was very special. We had a nice, cozy kind of event, and it was really fun, very special. Aw. Well, thank you, Chris. And I'm wondering if anyone else would like to ask a question of Linda, and you're welcome to pop on just the way Chris did, using her computer or using the phone. And while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go ahead and read one of the questions that probably a lot of people have. So Christine wanted to ask you, Linda, about, she thinks, well, this could be a weird question, but are you constantly hearing the animals around you speak, or do you choose which ones to tune into? How does that work?
Well, that's a very logical question. It's not like I'm hearing a bunch of information comes very differently. I think people have it's misunderstanding about how any psychic works, whether it's animal communication or with people. But oftentimes, if there's something, I'll be in a group where there might be a dog, or I'll be walking down the street and see a dog. Sometimes information will come to me where I'll understand that that dog is coming from a really happy home, and it's not based on body language where the animal's just bouncing around, because that doesn't necessarily tell us what's really going on. But something will come to me about their home life, about their diet, or perhaps even an illness or something that's going on with them. So they're not just all coming at me at the same time yet.
Oh. Well, thank you for answering that. I know that's a question that probably I think I've had that question before too. So we have another person who commented in the chat box. So you're welcome to ask questions in the chat box, or you can just join us with your voice. That's always wonderful too. So Frank Lane in Southern California, he's really getting what you're saying, that that our feelings are a higher form of communication, even above speech, and that humans and animals, we communicate by our emotions, and our feelings are what is understood by our companion animals. And that veganism honors our emotional connection to all life. And he was sharing that art is no different, and that it communicates in ways that words cannot. So I think this is more of a comment where he's sharing that compassion for animals is God's gift, so we may know how to love. And he also shares that he's a writer, and so words, it's really words are moving his emotions. And maybe that might be similar to your art.
Yeah, I think, we all have a gift. I think everyone has our special gifts, and, whatever gift you might have, whether it's writing or art or singing or, music, playing a guitar, whatever, I think that we can all use our gifts to make a difference for animals on some level, in some way.
Yeah, that's encouraging.
There are so many people now compared to when I first got into animal rights in the 70s. Now there's people with all kinds of talents, like even comedians who are helping to bring awareness to animal suffering and make a vegan world. Yeah.
Ellen DeGeneres has a wonderful story and a wonderful story about her shift or her epiphany. And so she's using her stardom and her, her position, and she's a comedian as well. So it's definitely, yeah. I mean, we all, have that special gift, and it's wonderful if we can all use it in that way.
Yeah, that's true. So just want to invite anyone who'd like to either ask a question or make a comment. And, I actually have a question as well. I know that your heritage influences, who you are. And I think the lovely name that you were given by, I think it was your grandmother. I wonder if that impacts your artwork or your sense of spirituality and even your veganism. I'm wondering if that has a role or is sort of woven in as a thread into your life.
Oh, good question. I think I didn't use, again, I just took everything for granted. I took what I was feeling from animals. The information they were sharing with me was just quite astonishing, and I took it for granted. I just didn't realize it was anything. And I don't like making too big of a deal out of it, because I do feel we can all communicate on some level. I think now my role, I genetically, it's not even a genetic thing, that's just in I feel a connection, and that I would have never said that 10 years ago, very strongly now.
Mm-hmm. And then Frank has another question for you, which is, how would your art be different if you were not vegan? Do you think it would be any different?
Oh gosh, that's a hard question. I do different types of art. I do very contemporary, large abstract paintings, and so I don't. My passion is art that represents animals. So I guess to answer that, probably not, except the medium that I use. I use non-toxic. I try to use earth-friendly mediums, no matter what type of work I do. So I guess to answer the question, no, probably not much different. Yeah.
Well, your art is gorgeous. I love your art. It's so beautiful. It really lifts my spirit when I see it. It's just the depth of it and the density of the colors and the metaphors and imagery. There's just really reached deep into my soul as a very symbolic.
Just to back up for a minute to say a little more about Frank's question. I guess because even with my abstract, I'm still a passionate vegan, so I don't know how to separate the two, but I really always primarily focus on my animal work, and so again, I guess they're not interchangeable. I'm vegan, and that's just the way. I'm vegan who abstract sometimes, and I'm a vegan who paints animal work sometimes. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Any other way.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, please state your name.
Hi, this is Georgia.
Hi, Georgia.
Hi. I was just wondering if there was any advice regarding the severe pain that one sometimes feels when hearing about all the different abuse of animals, and then it just sometimes is overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat that question again? I didn't quite hear it all.
Um,
I was saying that if you had any advice for people who had felt extremely deep feelings and upset about different forms of abuse that come to light all the time, and sometimes it seems very overwhelming.
Oh, absolutely. It's overwhelming. I deal with that all the time because not only am I dealing it from an activist perspective, but also from an animal intuitive perspective where I'm picking up all these feelings, and it definitely is overwhelming. So I think we have to meditation and realizing that we can't save the world alone, we can only do our part. And because otherwise you do get over. And I have some hard moments sometimes. I did a painting because I was overwhelmed and distraught, and I painted almost 23 hours straight without taking a break. So, I think writing, when you feel that, write it down, write poetry, start writing a journal, even try, do a painting. You don't have to be an artist who, perfect, things don't have to be perfect, just express your feelings, with color, if you're not wanting to write. Or go out and build something, build a medicine wheel. Find an outlet. For me, that's why I paint, partly why I paint, because I have to paint their stories, and that's how I deal with when I feel overwhelmed or too stressed to deal with what I'm feeling. It definitely becomes overwhelming, so I understand what she's saying. I understand that feeling.
Yeah. I think so many animal activists, maybe all of us, are in tune to some degree, similar to you, Linda, in that we're very empathic. We have huge empathy for animals and anyone who is suffering, and that makes it ironically harder to do what we do, but at the same time we wouldn't be motivated to do it in the first place if it weren't for that strong amount of empathy that we have. And your empathy goes a little farther because you actually get specific messages. But I think for all of us there is that, and I guess what you're saying is find an outlet, maybe, to express.
And share your stories. It takes a lot of courage sometimes to come out. For me, I'm actually an introvert and I'm shy and I don't like speaking. But I do it because our animals need us to do it. If we don't do it, who's going to do it? And that's just another way to deal with the stress or the trauma or feeling overwhelmed at times, because it's hard when you see something happening and you can't do something. It's really, really I did a painting that I painted straight through for almost 23 hours straight because I was so overwhelmed and so devastated by something that I had seen. It was very heart-wrenching for me. And so, in the painting I did, it's called A Blessing for Lily. And when I was with my publisher, it had to be the #1 seller. So I felt like, even though they didn't know the story, her story was being told. And it also gave me an opportunity to tell her story each time I was in a position where I talked about my art.
Right.
Yeah. That's amazing. And I think it's very encouraging to all of us to be able to channel those feelings of overwhelm and sometimes of depression and maybe anger towards something that's creative and something that can actually influence people in another way. So artwork and writing, poetry, those are wonderful ways to tell our stories. And I think that doing some action, whether it's signing a petition or talking about it with friends or trying to do some artwork, each action that we do will make a difference. It will really move us from that place of helplessness into empowerment and to social change. So thank you so much for sharing, Linda, what your strategies are and how you reach out to others, including just telling the stories. And the artwork is like a platform for you to do that.
I think also too is to surround yourself with people that, with it's a meetup group or an online group, get people who you can find, even if they're across the world, get that support.
Yeah, well, that's great. That's what we try to do with our community. We're in different areas across the country, maybe even across the world, but here we can unite. We can really hear each other, because I think that's very important, that we hear each other's stories so we can understand and relate and realize we're not alone. We're part of a rising awareness. We're part of this revolution that's happening. And it's really a very powerful thing to realize that we're part of a revolution and of peace and love for all life.
True.
Yeah.
Don't want to run out of time because Linda has agreed to do meditation for us, right, Linda? We're talking.
So Linda, that she shared with us that she would do a little prayer or meditation for the end of our gathering this evening, and we're getting close to that time, so we just want to check in, see if that's something that will happen, and if you're at home or wherever you are in the world, just to take a nice deep breath and just kind of center yourself for this gift that Linda will share with us.
Okay. This is a Ojibwe prayer that I've revised, and I use it sometimes in my animal work. So I'm happy to share it with you. So, Creator and Great Spirit, whose voice we hear in the winds, and whose breath gives life to all beings, we ask that you always lead us on the path of compassion, and make our eyes behold the beauty of other species, for we know they are also our sisters and brothers. Make our ears sharp so we may hear their voices. We ask for your wisdom so that we may understand the lessons they have to share with us. We ask for your strength so that we have the fortitude and courage to always speak out. Creator, please keep us humble. Forever remind us that we are not superior to other species, but rather they are sentient beings and we are their guardians and advocates. Make us ever ready to come before you as compassionate human beings. So as our life drifts away as a fading sunset, may our spirit come to you without shame, for we have lived a compassionate life. Amen.
Beautiful, Linda. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm glad to have you to share it. Thank you for giving me that opportunity.
Well, we're so grateful to you for joining us this evening and for sharing about your life's work and your philosophy and how integrated veganism is into who you are as a person. And I think you really live that. You're like veganism in action with your art and all the things that you do. So, and your prayer felt so much like a blessing. I feel blessed to go forward now with activism and with being a voice for animals in the world.
Well, thank you for giving me.
This has been just wonderful, very helpful to me. So appreciate your.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. So I think just as a way of closing tonight, just to let you know that on our next Vegan Spirituality online gathering will be in November. Will be, I believe, the 3rd of November, and we will have Stephen Kaufman, who's, I think, the president of the Christian Vegetarian Society, and he will be joining us, of the association, in December. So we're looking forward to that. And we also have a sustainable activism webinar coming up with someone named Matt Russell. That actually will be the 3rd of November. And then the next weekend will be with Stephen. Matt Russell is with Animal Defenders International now, but he used to work for In Defense of Animals, and he's going to share some of his experiences he did some undercover work, and really just how activists who endure some of this secondary trauma can repair themselves and come into internal balance and harmony afterwards. So, and stay tuned. We have an animal activist support group for anyone who wants to join in on that. That's always the 4th Thursday of the month. So stay tuned. We've got plenty of fun things coming up, and just want to say thank you to everyone for joining us and for participating in the evening tonight. We really look forward to this, and it's so sacred to have this time together. Thank you to Linda and Judy and to all of you for joining us. If you'd like to unmute yourself for a goodbye so we can all hear each other's voices.
See you.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. It was a true delight. Oh, it's wonderful to hear you. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.